Jason, you're an archivist, and we're a community college, and it's so rare that the community colleges in general get a chance to hire somebody of your caliber to do a super exciting project. And you're archiving the Kukuchi Collection. So can you talk about that, what that is, and why it's so important to our community?
Yeah, so I agree. It is really special that Kauai Community College gets to develop the Kukuchi and host the Kukuchi Collection. So Dr. Kukuchi was a local archaeologist. He was born and raised here in Hawaii and had a special affinity and love for Kauai. He spent the majority of his life here. He was an archaeologist who focused on Native Hawaiian archaeology and also an instructor and professor here at Kauai Community College for 28 years. And the Kukuchi Collection is curating his archaeology project materials, mostly associated with places here on Kauai, and also his personal papers and many other information items that he collected over his career.
So, okay, so you have this collection, like in boxes and, I don't know, files, all these different things. So you have to archive them. Well, so what does that mean that you're going to archive them?
Archival philosophy tries to respect the original order that the person who collected the items or produced the items had them in. And so we began by trying to maintain that order to the extent as possible. The Kukuchi Collection is interesting because it's been through so many hands over the past 2 decades as it's been moved from different storage place to storage place. So the original order isn't entirely present, and in that case, it's my responsibility to decide the best way to arrange the items that really maximizes the ability for students and faculty members and other researchers to be able to access the materials so that they can use them in their research or in their learning, and then they can be easily put back into a place where they belong and the cycle of access can start over again.
And so that's really what archiving is.
Yeah.
It's like to make information accessible.
Absolutely.
And to be able to put it back again too.
Yeah.
So you can access it again and again.
Yeah.
So so what you said was the materials will be accessible to students, to faculty, to the community. So can you give an example maybe to a faculty member, like why they might want to access the Kukuchi collection?
The Kukuchi Collection is a really excellent opportunity for faculty members to fulfill our mission as a college to be a Native Hawaiian place of learning. Because the Kukuchi Collection is a Native Hawaiian collection, it contains Native Hawaiian materials from archaeology project materials and also print materials that are Native Hawaiian in nature. And archaeology is a multidisciplinary discipline, so the materials can really be applied to a wide variety of disciplines in social sciences, humanities, and sciences themselves. And it's, again, just such a great opportunity for even, say, a chemistry professor to integrate cultural curriculum into their science course by looking at project materials that included chemical analyses that would show like geological information about a place or even human activity in a place, and to let students see how chemistry can be applied to archaeology, but also how culture, and more specifically Native Hawaiian culture, is relevant for our students here in Hawaii.
Awesome. So very, very broadly applicable. What are students, like individual students, going to have access to the collection?
They will. Yeah.
So, for example, why would a student want to access the information? Can you think of an example?
Well, I think it's really good opportunity to have students look at how a collection can show information about natural sciences, specifically about the land here in Kauai, and also to learn more about what it means to be Kanaka in Hawaii in relation to the land, or just a human in relation to the environments that we live in. But also there's a lot of really just fun memorabilia that has interesting imagery on it, so students can really look at that imagery and apply it to a whole wide variety of different research topics, and really it's just up to our own ingenuity and creativity to come up with those questions that we can ask and inspire our students to ask.
So you say there's a lot of interesting imagery. Can you give an example of one?
Well, we have vintage postcards demonstrating imagery from all over Kauai. I have some journals from Kapa'a High School called Mo'olelo that were published in the 70s that just have, again, more vintage imagery in them, and also very local and specific history for Kapa'a and people in the area of Kapa'a.
What is the most interesting thing you have archived so far?
So for me, the most interesting thing that I found and something that I've really appreciated finding are all of the personal notes that Dr. Kukuchi made in the early 2000s, mostly between the year 2000 and 2002, when he was doing a lot of the planning that he needed to do to get this archaeology project archive established. So there are a lot of notes about his plans for an archaeology project archive and a lot of his notes for the planning he did to present a workshop here at Kauai Community College in 2002 about how to establish an archaeology project archive. And he really had a vision to establish an archaeology project archive to help address a curation crisis that's currently happening in the islands, where there's so many archaeology project materials but not enough facilities to curate them, so a lot of materials are just not being properly cared for, and he wanted to help address that, but he also needed a place for his own materials to be curated and cared for over time. And being able to use those materials and see what his ideas were has been really helpful for me to know how to continue to move this collection forward.
So it's a guiding document for you on how to archive.
Not so much how to archive necessarily, just his idea for what an archaeology project archive should be and what his vision was. Yeah, in terms of even the architecture, there's drawings that he drew out about how he feels the building should be designed and all of the different components that should be in the building. So he got really detailed about it.
So do you even have a big enough space for that?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think that the college will be able to address the entirety of Dr. Kukuchi's vision. It's a big task to be able to curate an entire island's worth or an entire statewide worth of materials in archaeology, but we absolutely can do our best to take care of his materials and maybe acquire a few other projects from different sources as well. So at least we know that we're doing our best in that regard.
Typically, on a typical day, when you come into work, well, what do you do to archive this collection?
So my day usually begins by documenting the temperature and the humidity in the room, because I want to make sure that the environment is being controlled in order to do our best to conserve the materials. I also am monitoring for pests in the archive, so I usually check my sticky traps to try to get an idea as to what's happening with the insects, which I don't know how people feel about that, but for me it's really interesting to have this whole pest management plan happening and to be able to make decisions just based on like the number of little insects that I'm seeing in my sticky traps. But then after that, I mean, right now I'm mostly going through the boxes and taking a basic inventory of everything that is in the boxes, and there's so many materials right now. I really have to work at a very topical level, so I'm mostly taking a box level inventory. So for example, I will say this box contains 40 bags of excavated materials, artifacts, and other ecofacts. Or this folder contains 20 papers of personal handwritten notes, but I'm not currently taking an item by item inventory.
Just very general overview.
Yeah, and then as time goes on, things will get more detailed and minute.
So just categorizing the boxes and the files, and then you're gonna drill down more. When do you think, in your estimation, we might actually have, like, I know you just started, but when, in your estimation, do you think we might have a center that people could walk into and there's displays and they can get their questions answered about the collection?
So right now I'm using a archival process called accessioning is processing, and what that does is it allows me to at least get a baseline inventory established so that people can have access to that inventory and see what's present, so that people can at least start requesting to see certain items now.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm able to streamline making those information resources accessible sooner than later, which is really at it is the fundamental goal of an archivist, is to be able to make the materials accessible. But in terms of having the actual center established, it will probably be up to 2 more years. There's a lot of physical planning that has to be done and a little bit of renovating. We hope to have a new floor put in, and then there's furniture and other design elements that have to go into it. And all of this has to be done in a way that both meets archival standards and also is aesthetically and then pleasing and inviting for people coming to visit. So I would estimate up to 2 more years, but we're working on the planning now.
Well, I can't wait to see the product, and it's amazing that you are allowing people to access the materials while you're creating the collection and archiving the collection.
Yes, we just have to do that with a lot of care for the materials.
Right.
Yeah.
What a responsibility you have. It's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Jason. I'm so glad that you were able to take the time today and talk. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.